Welcome to Outreach Connection, focusing on topics and issues that reach our communities with the love and the power of Jesus Christ.
Hello and welcome to Outreach Connection. My name is Timothy Southers and I serve as your host. Really excited today to get the opportunity to talk to Envoys Justin and Colleen Corliss from the Salvation Army. But before we do that, I would like to talk about our theme verse of the day, which comes from Mark chapter 16, verse 15. As Jesus was sitting there talking to the disciples, he said, "And he said unto them, Go ye into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature." That is our Great Commission, and we're really excited to have the Envoys Justin and Colleen Corliss here today from the Salvation Army, who are new to the city at this point in time, but not to this area. You guys have been to Quincy before, and so we just want to welcome you to Outreach Connection.
Thank you. Yeah, this is it's been a bit of a homecoming for me, at least. So we got the word that we were moving here to Quincy from Phoenix. We got that word in late July, and when we found out that we were moving here, I kind of chuckled to myself because my parents actually had been the pastors of the Salvation Army here, the officers at the Salvation Army here from 1988 to 1990. So when I was a kid, I actually grew up here a bit. So when we found out that we were coming, it was like, really, Quincy, back home.
Back home.
So,
you were telling me too that your brother graduated from QHS.
Yep, my oldest brother graduated from Quincy High School. He was a member of the marching band back in the day. My other brother was on the football team. He got moved his senior year of high school, but we had some great fond memories of our time here in Quincy. So
you have to tell me, is Quincy still the same? Does it look different? How's it changed for you?
Oh, Quincy is a lot the same. A lot of it's changed, but a lot of it feels the same. I think that's the thing I like most about Quincy is that the feeling of Quincy, the people of Quincy haven't really changed much. Things have grown, things have changed. We have new businesses coming in. Salvation Army's changed a lot over the last 30 years, but the community itself, I really feel like hasn't changed too much. Wow.
Excited. Well, tell us how you got involved once again with the Salvation Army and how that came about.
Sure. So I got started with the Salvation Army from the time I was born. I'm actually a fifth generation officer with the Salvation Army. So my family goes back to the late 1800s in London with the Salvation Army, where it was founded. So I was born and raised in the Salvation Army, not only in it as a congregant or a member of the church, but my parents being the pastors. We've moved all over the place with the Salvation Army, so I have a hard time calling any one place home. But when I was a teenager, my parents and I were living in Michigan at the time. When I was a teenager is when I came to know the Lord after a few difficult years. And it was actually at a youth councils, which is a youth event where all the Salvation Armies from a larger community would get together, and the teenagers would have a weekend together of praise and worship. And it was at a youth councils that I came to know the Lord as my personal Savior for the first time, really. And the first conversation that Colleen and I ever actually had was at the altar where I gave my life to God.
Wow, that's amazing.
And so that was back in 1996. And then about 3 years later, we ended up getting married and spent a few years as youth pastors and associate pastors at a couple different churches. And then went to seminary and became pastors at the Salvation Army in Rockford, Illinois. And we served on the west side of Rockford for a number of years. And getting to know a different side of ministry. So we had been in more rural, small town churches for a number of years as either youth pastors, associate pastors, and then we went to Rockford. It was a more urban setting that we were ministering into, and so learning to serve God in a different fashion.
Most definitely.
So that's kind of my origin story. I know Colleen has a bit of a different one.
Yeah, I grew up in the Salvation Army. My grandparents were officers, Don and Ruth Lovejoy. And my parents were not officers, but they raised us at the Grand Rapids Fulton Heights Corps. I grew up there. I spent my whole entire childhood, all my formative years at that Corps, and that's where we got married. Was at the Grand Rapids Fulton Heights Corps. And so we were always at the Corps, and when I was a teenager, that's when I gave my life to the Lord, and very soon after that, he called me to officership, and along with my husband, and so then we went on from there. We went into ministry together.
Awesome. Yeah. So it says now you guys then stepped away from the Salvation Army. Talk a little bit about what you were doing outside of the Army.
I was heavily involved with the theater arts. I'm a vocalist, I'm a singer, and I was naturally drawn to storytelling and that community sense of pulling something together, reaching towards a goal. And so I was very drawn to theater arts and worked mostly with community theaters, but I would do whatever they they needed me to do because I had a passion for it. I loved it. I would sweep the floor if they wanted me to. But I got some experience performing, of course, and directing and producing and stage managing. Like I said, anything that they would have me do, I would do it. And what was really beautiful was that when God was renewing the call on us to come back and be pastors of a church, and we were given our appointment, it was the Quincy Kroc Center. And the Kroc Centers are these wonderful places for fine arts and education. And they give access to people who might not have access to that kind of thing. And so they have worship theaters, and they have vocal programs, and they have music programs and programs that they didn't have when I was growing up. And so I saw what God had built in me as a passion during those 10 years when I was gone. I saw him pulling that together within the Army, and I was in awe of the way that he works and how he uses us and builds those passions in us. So
I can imagine being the fifth generation and being your grandparents being involved with the Army. When it was a time to come back, there wasn't a bunch of kicking and screaming, was there?
Well, there might have been a little bit of kicking and screaming on our parts, maybe not on our family's parts, but when Colleen and I decided to leave the Salvation Army for a time, I started working for corporate America. I was a vice president for a bank. And spent a lot of time reaching for success, striving every day for my own gain. And about 2 years ago is when God started calling me back to full-time ministry, and it was a challenging time in my life. I was at the height of my success with my corporate career, and I got a phone call from a former congregant who his son was vital to the ministry that we were doing in Rockford. I remember as we were trying to engage into the community for the first time and get to know a new setting, Isaiah was the one teenager that was always in my office. He would come to our after-school program. Instead of hanging out in the gym, he would hang out in my office and just talk. And he had a personality that just was second to none. I loved Isaiah. He was one of the funniest, most outgoing people I'd ever met. And so we spent a good 3 years watching him go from a kid on the streets to a kid in the church. And that's where he spent his time. And so 2 years ago, his dad called me to let me know that Isaiah had been shot and killed outside his house. And it broke me. It broke me. It started the questions. Well, what would have happened had I not left? Where would Isaiah be today had we stayed in the ministry? And the answer I got was, you can't know that. That's not for you to know. That's not where we are. But what I can know is, where's the next Isaiah going to be? And so I didn't like that answer. In fact, I did not want for a while to come back to ministry. I think we fought it for about 1.5 years, and then God really continues to move in both Colleen and I, and said that this is where we're meant to be. And so when we opened ourselves back up into the opportunity of returning back to ministry, it was one of the strange things about the Salvation Army is we don't get to choose where we serve. And when the word came to us that we'd be going to Quincy, it was a real confirmation from God. And not only were we coming to Quincy, But for Colleen, we were coming to Quincy, and we were going to a Croc Center where we have all these ministry opportunities.
Wow.
And so it was definitely one of those things where God was like, we were always meant to be an officer. And we had our time in which we had turned from that calling and said that we wanted our own lives. We wanted our own wants and needs to be met. And God's reminded us that it's in Him that our wants and needs are met. He is our shepherd. Yeah. And we shall not want as long as He is our shepherd. And so we had to turn back from being our own shepherd, directing our own lives, and moving back into where God can provide for us. God can give us the purpose and the meaning of our lives. And after, we've only been here for 2 months, but after the last 2 months and in the last 2 months, I can look at it and say, the 10 years of success outside does not meet at all compare to the 2 months that we've been able to serve. Wow. And the fulfillment that God's providing for us and the satisfaction that God's providing for us in ministry. Wow.
What are some of the opportunities you've had in with using what you've gotten as far as in theater here at the Croc Center here in Quincy?
I've been able to get a couple of vocal students and start teaching voice lessons, which is just... I could do that every day, all day. That's one of the great joys of my life. And we also have a creative ministries group, and I've been able to work with the leader there. Melissa Hansen leads that group, and I've been able to work with her to start teaching some performing arts there, start teaching some of the things that I learned. And I think there are so many more opportunities for that. I've gotten engaged. Both my husband and I have touched base with the Quincy Community Theater, which is such a joy to see because they are so supported and they do so many things in this community. And just to be able to connect with them and to collaborate with them to start bringing theater arts to people who don't have access to it otherwise. And this community is so artistic.
Yes,
I feel so honored to be put here in such a community that is so engaged in that creative expression and that coming together. And I do think that's God's plan, and I think that He shows us who He is through those kind of things. And I think it's just wonderful that that's a part of what the Salvation Army is doing here, and a huge part of this community. I'm overjoyed about that.
Well, we definitely, I know I echo everyone says welcome back to the community and welcome to our community as well. Well, I know with this, we're coming up strong on the holiday season, and the Salvation Army is as busy as any of the other community things we have in the community during the holiday season. I want to talk a little bit about what you guys have coming up, starting with Thanksgiving and moving on into Christmas.
Yeah, so we do have a lot. Salvation Army is very active during the Christmas season. It's not the only time we're active, but it always seems to we kick it up to 11. It seems like during that Christmas season. And so we try to meet the needs wherever we can. One of the things that we love about the Salvation Army is the fact that it is social service driven. It is meeting man's needs both spiritually and physically. And so with the Salvation Army and all the things that we have at Christmas, we have our bell ringing campaign, of course. And we start really our Christmas season with the bell ringing. That starts pretty early on in November. I think November 8th is our official kickoff time for our Christmas campaigns and our bell ringing. We have an aggressive goal to raise money because without the support of the community, we can't do the ministries that we have in store for it. And so here in Quincy, we're set to make $410,000 in the next 2 months between November 8th and December 24th. And so, and then in Hannibal, because we don't only service Quincy, we also service the greater Quincy area, and in Hannibal, we have a goal set for that community of $110,000. And so there's a lot of work to be done, but we know that God is faithful.
Yes, He is.
And that God can provide blessings where we can't even see them. Wow. And so we know that as long as we are faithful to God, He will be faithful to us. And we know that as long as the communities are faithful and we are faithful stewards of the gifts that they give to us, God will be honored in all that we do. And so we know, without a doubt, we'll be able to make those two goals. So.
Okay. Talk a little bit about the Thanksgiving dinner.
So Thanksgiving dinner takes place on Thanksgiving Day on the 28th. And we service about 550 individuals that would not otherwise have not only food, but fellowship and family.
Yeah.
So it's not just about our ability to provide a meal, it's our ability to provide more. It's our ability to provide a meal, a community, a coming together of people, and it's in that Christ can move. Where
most definitely,
two or more are gathered, He's there in our midst, and so all of a sudden we know that by providing the service, we're providing the service of food, we're providing the service of fellowship, we're providing the service of Christ to the community. And so we're excited. This will be our first Thanksgiving here, but we're excited to be able to meet with and introduce ourselves to 500 or more people that otherwise would be alone on Thanksgiving.
That's right. Yeah. You guys also deliver, is that correct?
Yes, we deliver. They can sign up to have the food delivered to them, and that goes out at different increments of time during that day. So while we're serving the meal, those hot, fresh meals are also going out to people who can't come. Yes.
Amazing. Definitely needed within the community.
Yes.
I want to talk a little bit about going back to how can people become involved with bell ringing in particular?
So with bell ringing, you can sign up for any slot that you're looking for. You can contact Jeremy via the phone number. Otherwise, you can contact us and sign up directly on registertoring.com. I think it's actually .org. Registertoring.org, and you can sign up for whatever time slot you're looking for.
Okay.
And if you're not comfortable doing that on your own, you can always contact Jeremy. Jeremy's more than happy to be able to sign you up for a time slot that works for you. Bell ringing is a very, very important part of what we do. Not only does it provide us the financial resources that we need, but it's a way that we can get ourselves out into the community. It's one of the things that the Salvation Army is known for. Our thrift stores and our bell ringing, and so it's become a tradition, especially here in the United States. That's the start of Christmas, right?
Yeah.
You start hearing that ring a ding ding,
getting closer and closer.
And Christmas is coming, and so it's one of the ways that people can come out and start to get engaged with the Christmas season, but it's also a way to not only get engaged with the Christmas season for yourself, but you can then be giving back to the kingdom and to the community through your partnership with the Salvation Army in our Christmas campaigns.
Yeah, I remember one time having even groups can get involved as well. We had a group from Payson, our girls basketball team, a couple of years ago came out and did some bell ringing, and they really enjoyed it. They were singing songs and really enjoying themselves. So it's a great time, a great atmosphere as well.
Yeah. And what we love to see is groups that come out that even compete against each other. Who can raise the most money? And you can really make a family event, a community event out of it, and say it's really an opportunity for us to get to know the community, get to know the works that we're doing here, because we don't want our bell ringers just to come out and ring once and be done. We want them to know what is it that money's going towards. How is that money that they're helping raise? What do they use that for? And so Jeremy's a great resource to be able to connect them to not only Christmas and bell ringing, but what are the other opportunities that we have throughout the year for volunteer? We do a lot from like disaster services, the floodings that we get on a regular basis here, and the works that the Salvation Army does there. So it's really, I always like to look at our Christmas campaign, our bell ringing, as a open door into all the rest of the ministries that we have.
Most definitely. Talk a little bit about the utilization of those funds in those areas. You talked a little bit already, but talk a little bit about your $410,000. I know it can go a long way in helping this community and some of the needs that are going on within the community.
Yeah, it does. And so it's wonderful that we have such a great community that's so generous with their riches to be able to give to us. Without the generous donations that we get from the community, we wouldn't be able to provide all the work that we do. mainly the family services that we provide. So we're open 6 days a week where we're out there providing services, both bread lines, utility assistance, rent assistance. We have our homeless shelter.
Yeah.
So we're providing for the community in multiple different ways. And the uniqueness that we have as the Salvation Army is, as we're providing those services, we're providing those services in the name of God. We're not shy about who we are and why we do the work that we do. We wear our S's. It simply stands for Save to Serve. We are Christian. We are here with a mission, and our mission is to be the hands, feet, voice of Jesus Christ in our modern world. And the Salvation Army is very uniquely set to be able to be those things. And so as we are handing out bread at our food line, we're not just handing out bread, we're handing out the bread of life as well.
Yeah.
And so we're there to make sure that people are met holistically. So the founder of the Salvation Army, William Booth, his big thing was soup, soap, and salvation. You can't meet people's need just through preaching the word. You got to preach the word, but you also have to meet their daily needs. You need to make sure that they are physically taken care of, emotionally taken care of,
right.
that the whole of the person is being satisfied. And so one of the things that I'm excited about since we've come back to the Salvation Army is some changes that the Salvation Army has made in our family services. We have a program called Pathway of Hope.
Okay.
And what Pathway of Hope is, it's not a program, it's not a process. It's a way of getting involved in people's lives in which we are trying to bring them from a place of need to a place where they're self-sustaining. So it's not just come and receive bread on every Tuesday or something like that, or come get grocery assistance or rent assistance once a month or whatever it is that they need. But it's moving them from the place of need to a place where they are self-sustaining.
Wow. And
so we have a caseworker, a full-time caseworker, that's all she does. She doesn't do emergency services type of work where we have one social services person that focuses on the emergency services that people need. I'm in crisis. I need rent assistance. I need a place to stay. But then we also have Katie, who is our Pathway of Hope counselor, who is taking them to say, okay, how can we take you from here, where you're in that state of crisis, get you out of that state of crisis to where you're self-sustaining? Wow. How can we budget with you? Let's look at your finances. Let's look at your education. Let's look at your job history, and let's get you to a place where you can stand on your own feet, and then ideally be able to start giving back to the community as well.
Wow.
And so I've been really excited about our Pathway of Hope work and the work that Katie's doing within the community for that. So yeah.
Talk a little bit about what it is to be an envoy. Talk a little bit about that before and what that is. And so just want to talk a little bit to let people know about that.
Yeah, we chuckle because it's not a position that's very common in the Salvation Army. And so I actually, when they gave us the title, I had to look it up because I did not know myself. I'm like, so I'm going to be, because we were captains before, and then when we decided to come back, we were coming back with the rank of envoy, and I'm like, I don't really know what that means. And so I looked it up, and it simply means a person who is sent.
There you go.
So that's exactly how we've looked at ourselves. We are, as officers and envoys, we are people that are we're sent to a community. We are sent by God to where He needs us to be. And so what it means practically here in Quincy for us is we are the directors of spiritual development. We're the pastors of the church. So we, a lot of people don't know the Salvation Army is first and foremost a church. And so that is what we do. So we partner together with Majors Andy and Cheryl Miller as the administrators of the Salvation Army here in town, and it allows them to focus on the administration and the work that they have to do, and allows us to focus on our congregation and on the ministries that the Salvation Army provides, not only to our congregation, because I love to say that we've got this lovely campus downtown where we've got the big Croc Center, we've got the thrift store across the street, we've got our family services and shelter on the other side of the street. That's all our church. All of that is our church. And so when I talk about our congregation, we've got 1,500 people that come to us on a daily basis that are congregants. Now, they might not all attend our church, but they're all our congregation. They're all people that we are serving in God's name. And so God has been good to the people of Quincy and the congregation here in Quincy. We've got a beautiful facility. It's not the same facility that we had 30 years ago when I was a kid here. And it offers us the opportunity as Envoys to really take that and say, beyond the physical fitness center that we have, beyond the family services and the shelter that we have, what is the ministry that's being done there? How is God moving in people's lives in all those areas? And how is God discipling His people through those ministries? And so that's really what Colleen and I are able to focus on is what, out of all the work that the Salvation Army is doing, how can we be stellar focused on how is God coming to the people in those areas?
Well, I know that the work firsthand of what the Salvation Army did. I have an opportunity to work there back in 2014, 2015, and just, I mean, I had no clue. I was clueless. And there may be somebody who's out there watching who's thinking to themselves, you know, this way of service, this love of Christ that you guys have and showing the love for other people. They want to know about that love. If you don't mind, just talking to the camera, talking to people who are out there, and give them an opportunity to really connect with the Jesus that you know.
So one of the things that I want to say is that a passage that's been very close to my heart over the last few weeks as I've been getting re-engaged into community is that this is love. This is real love. That while we were still sinners, while we were still God's enemies, Christ came and Christ died for us. It's found in Romans chapter 5, verse 8. And what that means is God's not waiting for us to change our attitudes. God's not waiting for us to mend our ways. God's not saying you have to get right before you can come to me. Because while you were still in the depth of sin, while you were still lost, while you still didn't know the way out, that's when Jesus came. That's when God showed His love for humanity. Not when we were right in our own sense, not when we could show our own righteousness, but when God's righteousness came to us. God decided to say, my people don't need to sacrifice blood anymore. My people can be under the blood of Jesus. And His righteousness, His right living, His holiness can become your holiness.
Let's pray. Go ahead.
Heavenly Father, we just want to thank You so much that we can be holy because You are holy. We can be righteous because You are righteous. And You didn't wait, God, for us to get ourselves right. You got us right on the cross. Thank You so much, Jesus.
Amen. Amen. Well, we thank you so much for being with us. The Envoys, as you guys are sent, both Justin and Colleen. Thank you so much for being with us. We want to thank you for joining us today for Outreach Connection. We're excited about the things that are going on in our community, and we're really excited about what you guys are joining us. Thank you so much. God bless you.
Contact us at Outreach Connection, WTJR 222 North 6th Street, Quincy, Illinois 62301.
In watching Dr. Stanley all these years, he's still speaking the truth about hearing the voice of God and obedience. There's nothing added to it. There's nothing that he's taken away. It's just truthful. And then it's Dr. Stanley, and he is an amazing communicator. There's just no nonsense there, and that's what I love about him. You know, he's very honest about who God is and truthful, and that's essential in the world that we live in today.
Does your Christian